Welcome to T-Lokes, Tucson's local business podcast. I'm your host, L. Connor McEverly, and in each episode, we embark on a journey to connect with the passionate minds behind the businesses and nonprofits that make our community thrive. Join me as I sit down with the owners, visionaries, and change makers who pour their hearts into shaping the local landscape. We explore the challenges, triumphs, and unique journeys that define Tucson's business community. From the corner coffee shop to the innovative startups and impactful nonprofits, T-Lokes is your window into the diverse stories that make our city special. Tune in and get ready to get connected. This is T-Lokes. Howdy, folks, and welcome to T-Lokes, your Tucson local business podcast. I'm your host, L. Connor McEverly, and here with me in the studio today is Shota Austin with Tank's Green Stuff, your local green recycling and landfill facilities. It's my pleasure to introduce to the show Tank's Director of Compost, Marketing, and Sales, Shota Austin. How are you doing today, Shota?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, and I really appreciate you making the time to come here for the show.
Of course, yeah.
So let's jump right in. How long have you worked with Tanks?
So I started in Tank's Green Stuff in 2016. So a little over 7 years now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And what brought you to Tanks?
That's a bit of a funny story. I went to the University of Arizona, and I was a U of A compost cat.
Bear down.
Exactly, bear down. And my now partner was also a compost cat. And when she finished school, she started working for Tank's Green Stuff, but then decided to go back and get her graduate degree. Okay. So they were looking for someone to replace her. And at the time, I was working at Green Valley Pecan, or FICO, down in kind of south of Tucson.
Okay.
One of the world's largest producers of pecans. And she called me and said, hey, they're looking for somebody who has similar experience as I do. And I suggested the interview. And at the time, I was an outside dog. I didn't really want to work in an office and do sales. But I went and did the interview, and the interviews went well. And I started working there, and I've been there since.
Nice. That's awesome. So they got you in from outside, huh?
Yep. Now I'm inside and outside, but mostly inside these days, dog. But things are going well, and I've been enjoying my experience.
Well, that's great to hear.
At Tank's Green Stuff. So
yeah, and I mean, you've been there since 2016. So I guess the next question is like, what keeps you there?
Well, the first bit is at Tanks in general. We do what I believe to be is good work. So in terms of something to spend your time and dedicate your working hours towards. Working for a company that works on sustainable waste management solutions for Southern Arizona and to create organic compost and landscape materials is probably on the paper one of the better ways you can spend your time in terms of a job. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that it's a family-owned business. And so Jason and Amanda Tankersley, they own the business, and they inherited the business from their father, who started it back in the early mid 80s. And they have since grown the business from just kind of land reclamation projects into recycling, and then now into creating organic compost and landscape products for the community. And so the environment's really nice. The people I work with are fantastic. And like I was mentioning to you earlier, like I get to bring the dogs to the office, and we have a lot of fun on social media. And overall, it's just a really nice work environment, and people to work with, and a nice goal or task, or kind of what we're trying to achieve seems meaningful for me and for our community. So
absolutely. And I think kind of rolling off of that, like because Tanks does so much, right? Like you guys have those like recycling and landfill services. You provide landscape and gardening materials. You also provide rollout services for like people doing demo and stuff. So like, I think, piecing the puzzle together, I think we get a good idea of what the mission of Tank's Green Stuff is. But I'd like to hear from you. What do you believe, or in your words, what's the mission of Tank's Green Stuff?
Yeah. So our mission in general is just to provide sustainable waste management solutions and high quality organic compost and planting materials or garden and landscape materials for our community and Southern Arizona, and then Arizona as a whole. So Tank's Green Stuff, it kind of breaks down a little bit weird, where the original company is the Fairfax Companies. And now the Fairfax Companies was started by Ron Tankersley in the 80s, and Jason took over the business. And in the 2000s, the Fairfax Companies was operating land reclamation projects, where they're basically taking large holes in the ground that were used for aggregate mining and putting inert materials like rock, concrete, dirt, asphalt, and basically filling in holes, bringing them back up to grade, and reclaiming the land for development. So that's kind of where we started off. Along the way, we acquired the Speedway recycling and landfill facility. And of course, when you own a landfill, you start looking at the expense of a landfill. And, well, not all of it needs to go in the landfill, because the longer that landfill lives, the better it is for the business as well as for the community at large, because it's very expensive and costly to not only build a landfill, but even more expensive to close a landfill. So Jason started recycling construction debris, cardboard, paper, metal, things that we could pull out and sort out of what the materials we were already accepting. And somewhere along the line, around 2010, Jason was looking at, of course, things going into his landfill, and decided, well, we could divert landscape trimmings. And so we started diverting landscape trimmings from the landfill and started composting them. And once we started composting them, it was hard to find traction or space in the market for our products competing against the larger producers here in the state. So we decided to shift our focus from just composting and selling compost to creating high quality organic compost. And then from there, developing a product line of sustainable landscape materials using ingredients like coco coir, instead of peat moss or traditional peat products, and creating a bunch of variety of mixes. And so our goal there is to create organic, sustainable landscape materials and mixes and soil products that are designed for our environment here, designed for the types of plants we can grow here, and be cost effective for our community. And along those lines, we also look at ourselves as kind of educators, trying to help people have the most success in the garden, whether it's with cactus or houseplants or raised bed gardens. And then, of course, even in turf, a lot of people are like, why do we have turf in Arizona? Well,
right.
To some degree, turf's going to be there, whether I like it or you like it or anyone else likes it or not, turf is there. So like our organic compost, we produce some varieties of compost that are specifically designed for turf that help to reduce the amount of water usage and nutrients runoff from places like golf courses or ball fields or open spaces. And so, yeah, I think I've just kind of run off there a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of, how we got into organics and composting, and kind of our perspective towards waste management is doing what we can within the constraints of being a privately run business, a family-owned business, and the recycling market being what it is, and trying to do the most we can along a broad spectrum of things here in Southern Arizona.
Right. That is such a broad amount of things that you do. I mean, that goes from composting to making a whole product line. That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's kind of wild to think about, some people look at Tank's Green Stuff and the Fairfax Companies and like, it's a big company. There's a lot of people, a lot of money being thrown around. But at the end of the day, there's 50 employees that work for Tank's Green Stuff. And there are 3 people that make the compost. There's myself and Fabiola doing sales. We've got Livy, our sales assistant. There's Anthony, Paulie, and Eric that bag all of the products that you see at Ace Hardware or at local nurseries. And then that's kind of the Tank's Green Stuff team. We've got a handful of truck drivers, a whole bunch of hardworking guys running equipment, processing landscape debris or dirt or aggregates. And so we do a lot, and we all wear a lot of different hats. So like I said earlier, right now I'm actually just texting someone back saying, I'll have to call you right back because we're doing this podcast, but
Yeah.
we're always working and always doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which keeps things exciting and fresh.
Absolutely. So maybe for some listeners who don't know, where do you get the source of your landfill goods or your compost goods? Where does that come from?
So for the landfilling side of things, we operate 2 landfills at the moment. One of them is the Speedway Recycling Landfill Facility. The newest one we just opened at the beginning of 2023 is the Wilmot Recycling and Landfill Facility. Okay. And both of those facilities primarily focus on construction debris. So we're looking at demolition and just waste sources from kind of manufacturing or construction. So we don't deal with household trash. And so those kinds of things that come from just the average stuff that you and I would be putting in the garbage can in the back alley or what have you is not coming to Tanks Green stuff.
Right.
And then we accept landscape debris at 3 of our facilities. So that's the Ina, Wilmot, and Speedway facility. And we accept 2 different kinds of landscape debris. The first one we call clean green. So it's landscape debris free of lawn clippings, palm, and cactus. And that's what we use in the actual composting process, right? We don't use lawn clippings because that's usually the number one area in which herbicides and pesticides are used.
Makes sense.
And because we make organic compost, it's one of those things where if we cut that out, we can mitigate a lot of the risk for herbicides and pesticides in our end product.
Absolutely.
And then we don't use palm or cactus in our composting process because they generally take longer to break down in our composting process. And then things like glaucids from cactus, those don't break down at the same rate that like tree branches and leaves do. And because we have people playing in the soil, playing in the garden, going to community gardens or school gardens, just like, I just couldn't, just couldn't, just like, it's just too much to be like, people are going to be putting their hands in it. And who wants to get surprised by a little bit of cactus? Right?
Not me.
So the other side of the landscape debris that we accept, we call mixed green. So that's landscape debris free of trash and lawn clippings. We just don't accept lawn clippings at all, but can contain cactus and palm. And now that side of thing we use for alternative daily cover. So our landfill recycling facilities, the City of Tucson, Los Reales landfill recycling facility, Waste Management, whoever, anybody that's operating a landfill here in Southern Arizona is required to do something called alternative daily cover, which basically means at the end of a working day, they have to cover the working face of the landfill with organic material to prevent wind-blown debris and trash from flying around. And so that's where the mixed green goes, is it gets ground to 6-inch and then gets used at various facilities all throughout Southern Arizona for daily cover. So it goes to the landfill, but it's going there with a purpose. Right. It's something that has to happen. It's something that is beneficial to all of us here in the community. And so that's where that material ends up going to.
Awesome.
And then on the other side of that, we also accept recyclables. So like cardboard and plastics. Like at the moment, we're accepting cardboard for free at all of our facilities. And we're still currently accepting for free like Christmas trees as well.
Nice.
But that's kind of the roll-off side of it is Tanks roll-off and recycling. So we do recycling, dumpster services, cardboard pickups, as well as construction debris and metal recycling containers. So we bring a big dumpster to your work site or your house, drop it off, you fill it up, we take it away and sort it and do whatever we might be doing with the particular materials.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. And as a previous compost cat, is it a bummer that you can't use food wastes? Or are you kind of glad that food waste is not in your compost mix?
It is a bummer. Like we've talked about food waste composting a lot. Luckily, the City of Tucson is expanding on their food waste composting program.
Nice.
But food waste composting makes it really difficult to keep a facility clean and to produce a clean material. It's not impossible. It just makes it challenging. Yeah. And so what's nice about not doing food waste is that it's a lot easier for us to keep our product clean. It's a lot easier for us to keep our facility clean. But I do miss it. I
Right.
do miss it. Every once in a while, I'll go out to the city of Tucson composting operation, just get a nice big sniff of food waste compost. And like, it brings back a lot of awesome memories. And like, it's the right thing to do with food scraps,
Absolutely.
But like at home, I've got chickens, so I don't have to worry about food waste composting. It all goes to the chickens and we get eggs and we call it a good deal. Exactly. A fair deal.
So, throughout your time at Tanks, in your opinion, what was like the most interesting thing that came into compost or came into the landfill? Anything that stands out in your mind?
As like something that somebody brought in for recycling, or what have you. I don't have a whole lot of interesting items for Tanks Green Stuff or anything that we've received at Tanks Green Stuff that's like incredibly exciting or new or novel.
Right.
But at my time as a compost cat, we did get a full size, like 6 foot tall stuffed gorilla.
What?
In the food scraps.
In the food scraps?
Yeah. And that, my career of composting, that's still the wildest thing I've seen come in anywhere, is just, how did a 6 foot stuffed gorilla get into the food scraps bin? And the food scraps bins aren't 6 feet tall, so it was stuffed in there.
Oh my God.
Because those bins at the time were about 4 foot tall. But I mean,
Right.
This thing was huge, and I have no idea how it ended up in the food scraps.
That's wild. I mean, can you even compost a 6 foot tall stuffed gorilla? Is that compostable?
Theoretically, you could compost it. Would you want to? It's probably something that's easy enough to pull out that you wouldn't compost it.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, that was way back in the day, in like 2014 or something like that.
Right.
So
back in the day.
Yeah, that was like a decade ago, getting old. But that's one of the highlights of weird stuff I've ever found. Aside from that, like the most common thing that we find in the compost windrows that make it through the spotting process, the sorting process, and the grinding process, and end up in a compost windrow, the one we see all the time that we get comments on are golf balls.
Really?
Yeah, those things are like indestructible. They make it through the grinder, they make it into the truck. We have a machine that turns and flips the compost. And so those things, they just, we find them all the time. We have like a collection of
golf balls.
Golf balls, yeah.
That's super interesting. Goodness gracious. So, if there's someone out there, someone out there in Tucson right now, and they don't know about Tanks Green Stuff, who is that person? Who needs to know about Tanks Green Stuff? Who doesn't know about Tanks Green Stuff?
All right. Well, I mean, I'd like to say everybody.
Yeah.
In one way or another, it wouldn't hurt you to know about Tanks Green Stuff.
Oh, 100%,
right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a gardener, whether you're growing a lot of stuff or just a few things, we produce organic, locally made products for things from all the way from house plants down to cannabis plants. And if you're growing wheat in the field, we've got something for you too. If you're growing stuff inside, we've got stuff for you. If you're going outside, we got stuff for you. So that on terms of the gardening side, like even if you're just doing 1 or 2 houseplants, check us out.
Yeah.
Our soil mixes, like we talked about, we spent a lot of time developing and testing them to be different from what everyone else sells. And we don't make them different just because we want to be different. We make them different because we found some things in along the way that we found work better, that are easier, make it easier on you, make the plants happier, and keep plants alive. And the one thing, I guess, the ultimate way to answer this question in terms of the Tanks Green Stuff compost side of things is, if you think you have a black thumb and can't keep plants alive, chances are it starts with the soil, right? That's the foundation which all plants kind of come up through, right? Without good soil, you don't have a good foundation, and that whole house falls down. Right. I don't think anyone is born or has a black thumb. I think everyone has it in them to grow something, and it might just be as simple as having the right soil to start off with that can make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
So if you've always thought about growing stuff, but are always like, I'm always killing things and I don't want to waste any more money, shoot us a message, tell us what you want to grow, and we'll help you find the right soil to start off with and get you growing and get your garden dreams on their way. because that is definitely one of the ones that comes up all the time.
Awesome. So you heard it right here, gardeners or aspiring gardeners.
Yeah. Starts with the soil.
Yep.
Make all the difference in the world.
Now, are there any events coming up that people should keep an eye out for?
I don't have a whole lot of events scheduled at the moment. And when this podcast goes live, there'll probably be a whole bunch more information on things we're doing.
Yeah.
But keep an eye out on our Instagram and our Facebook pages. We always post about different events we're going to. One of the things I do on behalf of Tanks Green Stuff is I do a lot of announcing for Tucson Village Farm, which is the University of Arizona Extension kind of educational program.
Yeah.
So we do things like chicken poop bingo with them. And so that happens. There's a couple coming up, and you'll find that, of course, on our Instagram and their Instagram. We're doing the Tucson Organic Gardeners Spring Fair.
Awesome.
So that'll be coming up as well. And of course, you'll see that on Instagram. And then, if people tune into the Instagram and Facebook, you'll see we try to do a lot of fun stuff, create a lot of fun content. And that's also a great way to see where we're going to be at this spring for different events out in the community with Tucson Village Farm and TOG and so on and so forth. So this week that we're recording the podcast, I'm starting to get the emails for the spring calendar.
Right.
Can you be here? Can you be there?
Absolutely.
This, that, and the other. So we're building that up right now.
Awesome. And listeners, we will have those links for you in the episode notes. So if you want to stay up to date, you want to see Tanks Green Stuff social medias, go check out those episode notes and the links will be there.
Yeah. And another thing I'd like to mention as well is that we do a lot of work with community gardens and school gardens. And years past, that's been kind of like I want to say it's been haphazard in the way that we donate or provide compost or things for the community has been a little bit haphazard. So recently we started a nonprofit branch. It's called Tanks Green and Clean. So it's our 501c3 nonprofit. And that goal is to kind of centralize and create the most effect or impact on our community in terms of the donations and the projects that we work on. So you can check that out and find ways to support us or come out for events or volunteer so we can continue to provide compost, garden mixes, and educational opportunities for community gardens or schools or what have you. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
So that's something we're trying to figure out how to negotiate, because in past it's just been kind of like boom, boom, boom. And there hasn't been like a clear picture or view in how we build upon the donations or philanthropic efforts that we've done in the past.
Right.
Because it's just kind of one off. And we kind of want to make it so we're building more, where it's not just like we donated soil once and then for whatever reason that program is no longer there. We want to be able to build on that program so it expands and stays around and continues to benefit the community, opposed to just kind of disappearing into the hectic thing we call life. You know, things happen. It is what it is. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, personally, and I'm maybe a little biased because I was a plant science major, but I think that inspiring the young to, cultivate and grow food is so important. And I think like for people who are trying to be more conscious about, like their ecological footprint, or want to feel like they have some sort of autonomy in life, gardening is like one of the most radical things you can do out there. 100%.
Right.
Make your own food.
Make your own food. Create your own beauty and smell the soil. There's a lot for just on the food side of it and on the independent side of it, but it can also be really good for your mental health, whether it's working in the garden or just sitting down and enjoying what you've done in the garden,
100%. As an avid gardener, I can attest. Yeah. And that actually sparks a thought. One last question for you. As I was looking through Tanks Green Stuff's videos and YouTube and stuff, I saw that you tasted some of that compost in a video.
Yeah.
What are you tasting for?
That is fantastic. I get that all the time. I am famous for tasting the compost. And basically the tasting of the compost started out as a bit of a joke. So we offer tours of our composting operation.
Mm-hmm.
And when people think composting, and we use in our compost, we use the clean green that we talked about, and we use organic dairy manure. And those are the main two ingredients or feedstocks we use. And just the attitude of the public in some sense, in some ways, are like, compost, it has manure.
Yeah.
That's gross.
Right.
And the concept that I'm trying to share with the people on our tours and our educational opportunities is that once you compost something, it's no longer what it was, right?
Right.
We are channeling nature's natural process for decomposing or breaking down organic material into an organic amendment or into compost to reintroduce it back into the soil, so it then creates and completes the circle or cycle of carbon cycling. So when they're like, well, it's manure, right? And they're like, we don't want to touch the compost because it's manure in it.
Right.
It's like, well, now that it's been composted, it's no longer manure, it's compost. And like, you can taste it. You can put it in your mouth, and you're not putting manure in your mouth. Yeah. You're putting compost in your mouth.
And it's a very clear distinction.
Exactly. And part of that too also comes from a joke where, like, you know, composting for us at Tanks is part science and part feel, right? So there's a science aspect of it where we're looking for temperatures and temperature goals to make sure that our compost is processed at the right temperatures to break down pathogens or weed seeds or things like E. coli or salmonella.
Right.
And the other side of it is you put the temperature probe in, you get a temperature, that's great. But what do we do next with the windrow or the pile comes down to how it feels, how it looks, how it smells, and then how it tastes is just a little bit extra of, you know, just to kind of prove the point that it's no longer what it was, regardless of what you're composting, whether it's animal remains, food waste, landscape debris, or manure. Once you compost it, it's no longer what it once was. It's now compost.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to come and taste some sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of all the tours, and usually I do 5 or 6 tours a year, and all the tours I've done over the years, only one class decided that it was a good idea to taste it after I tasted it. And there were like 3 kids that were like, yeah, I'm going to try it. And they're like, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's almost ready.
You can taste how plant available those nutrients are.
Exactly. Yeah. They're like, it's pretty rich. It might be getting time to pull this and screen it and get it out into the bags.
Right.
And that was one of the most memorable tours for me when the kids decide, you know what, we're also going to taste it.
Nice.
But yeah, that's why we do it. It's more of a just an educational joke, fun time thing for us.
Well, it seems like you guys have a ton of fun. You have a really dedicated staff. Mm-hmm. You have a phenomenal mission and a wide array of services and products to offer our community. Shota, that is all the time that we have for today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I could absolutely pick your brain about compost more for, 30 more minutes.
For sure.
2 more hours. Who knows? But
there's a lot out there.
I appreciate it. And listeners, thanks for tuning in, and go check out Tank's Green Stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Toodaloo, y'all. And that's a wrap for another episode of T-Lokes, your go-to podcast for uncovering the untold stories of Tucson's local businesses and nonprofits. A big thank you to our incredible listeners for joining us on this journey of connection and discovery. I want to offer a great, growing, green thank you to Shota Austin from Tank's Green Stuff. I had a great time talking with you. Thank you again. Show them some love and check out their links in the episode notes. A huge thank you to Louis Sanders at Soundhouse Publishing for making our unforgettable podcast theme music. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected with Tucson's vibrant business scene, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback is invaluable, and it helps us continue bringing you engaging conversations. As we wrap up, remember that T-Lokes isn't just a podcast, it's a community. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or our Discord channel and share your thoughts, suggestions, or even recommend a local business or nonprofit you'd like to see featured on the show. Thank you once again for being a part of the T-Lokes community. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep supporting the heartbeat of Tucson. Toodaloo.